Hi, this is Dr. Cooper. I'm going to work through homework question number 9 in chapter 7. This is one of the questions that you could see. It might have different numbers than yours, but they're all going to be set up pretty much the same. What this question is asking you to do is analyze the service costs for some service departments and allocate them to production departments. So I went ahead and read through all the details of this question. There are two production departments. I hope I said that right. It's two service departments allocating to two production departments. So there are two production departments, and that is the market research and the financial analysis production departments, and they already have costs assigned of 540 and 850. And then there are two additional service departments, and those are the CFL group that has annual costs of 405 and the computer group with costs of 624. So those dollar amounts might be different or they might be the same, just depending on how the question shows up on your end. And then here are the percentage allocations for the two service centers, so the CFL group and the computer group. So I took that information and I put it in Excel in this table. So I've got service center 1 and 2 with their costs, and then production department 1 and 2 with their costs, and then I added those up to find the total for all of the overhead costs. Then I took the percentages from the question and I filled them in this way, side to side. And then over here, I calculated the direct percentages using just the P1 and P2 allocations. So for Service Center 1, the direct allocation for P1 is going to be 20% divided by 90%, because 20 and 70 is 90. And then the allocation from S1 to P2, the direct allocation is 70% divided by 90%. I left it as a fraction here because in the problem, it says do not round intermediate calculations, round final answers to the nearest dollars. So these intermediate percentages for the direct percents, the problem says to not round them. So I left them as fractions. The second service center here, we have 40 and 40. So for P1, it's 40 over 80, and for P2, it's also 40 over 80, and those will essentially be 50%. So for these two, it's fine if we round because there is no amount that needs to round off. But on the first ones, for Service Center 1, if you do 20 divided by 90, you get 2.2 repeating. And for 70 divided by 90, you get the same thing, but it's 0.87 repeating. So those are fractions. I'll put them all as fractions so you can see how I got the answer. All right. So the question is going to first ask us to do a direct allocation. So for the direct allocation, we don't need to worry about the service centers. We're just going to use these direct percentages. And so I'm going to write some formulas here so that I can allocate these numbers without the rounding. So I've got S1, so that's this first one, is going to allocate 405 times 20 divided by 90. So that's the allocation percentage over there. And then for S1 to P2, it's 70 over 90. So I will do 405,000 times 70 divided by 90. And those two, when I add them up, should equal $405,000. So I'll add those. Yep, 405. Okay, good. So I allocated all of S1 to P1 and P2, and then I'll do the same thing for S2. So 624,000 times 40 divided by 80. And same thing, 624,000 in S2 times the second direct percentage, 40 over 80. And then add those, and it should be 624. It is. Good. Okay, and then the total for P1 is going to be 540 plus that 90 plus 312. and 942. And then this one for P2 is 850 plus 315 plus 312, 1477. All right, super. And then the total cost is 2419. All right, so now let's do the step method. So I will reset this. And for the step method, it says specifically in the problem that the department that provides the greatest percentage of services to the other service department goes first. So Service Center 1 provides 10% of its time to Service Center 2, and Service Center 2 provides 20% of its time to Service Center 1. So that tells me that Service Center 2 needs to go first. So I'm going to switch those, and I just copied and pasted them to switch Service Center 2 to the top. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate 20. Oh, I got to switch these as well because I switched the order. Let's see, how should I do this? There. So Service Center 2 sends 20% to Service Center 1. Okay, so that's right. And 40 to P1 and 40 to P2. And then Service Center 1 sends 10% to Service Center 2 and P1, P2. All right, so that is good. All right, so 20% of Service Center 2 needs to goes to Service Center 1. So Service Center 1 needs to have more added to it. So plus 624 times 20%. Okay. And then P1 from S2 is going to be 624 times 40%. And P2 from S2 is going to be 624 times 40%. All right, so if I add these, well, it's only $4.99, but I put some in there. How should I illustrate this best for you? I could put it here where the 10% is, I guess. There, now it's 624. So that 124.8 that I just put in there, that's 20% of 624. And I put it right here. But this number is I actually added it in to the S1 number as well. And I just put it here so that I could add up the total and make sure that I had calculated all the percentages correctly. So that 124,800 is now included in with the original 405 that was already in there in Service Center 1. Okay, so now we're not going to be doing that 10%. We're just going to be doing the allocation from S1 using the P1 and P2 percents. But since they don't add up to 100, we're going to have to use the direct percents to do that second allocation because we're not going to be able to allocate that 10%. So S1 to P1 is equal to 529,800 times 20 over 90. And the S1 to P2 is 529,800 times 70 over 90. And those two should add up to 529,800. Great. Okay, so then the total for P1 is these three, 907.33. And the total for P2 is those three, 1,511,677. When you do this allocation with the direct percentages, make sure that you don't round that division, round off those repeating decimals, or it'll give you the wrong answer. Okay, let's move on to the third question, the third part of this question, and that is the reciprocal method. All right, so in this reciprocal method, we need to use the system, the equations, and we're going to solve the system of equations. So the first equation I'm going to write is that S1 equals 405,000 plus 20% times S2. So S2 is going to send 20% of its money to S1. And that would mean that S1 would then have 405 plus 20% of whatever S2 is. And then my second equation is whatever S2 ends up being, it'll be equal to 624,000 plus 10% of S1. And that's my system. Okay, so then I'm going to go to Desmos and solve the system. Maybe. Oh, for heaven's sake.